Good evening. You're just seconds away from thinking Re-envisioned with the unrivaled Henry G. Noel. Now, you might be wondering, thinking Re-envisioned, what's that all about? Well, let's just say your mind deserves this. Here's Henry.
Welcome, everybody, to Transitional Radio, home of Brian Brody's All Natural Being, IPM Nation's Sneak Speaks, Lee Rawley's Copy That Speaks, and this, the 28th episode of Thinking Re-envisioned. I am Henry G. Noel, your host for Thinking Re-envisioned. We are here and committed to making you think, making you question everything. I wish to thank you for joining me this Sunday evening. I would like to get your opinion on the subject of debt. Is the practice of living in debt beneficial or a contributor to society's ills? Now, I understand there are benefits and detriments to living in debt. I am more interested in your opinion. Now, we are live this evening from our uplink studio in Cuenca, Ecuador, 2 degrees south of the equator. We are broadcasting live on IPMNation.com, thanks to Matt Connerton, and Thinking Re-envisioned's Facebook and YouTube pages. I wish to thank all our listeners from around the globe, those listening on radio, those listening to our rebroadcasts, and you, our fly-on-the-wall video listeners, for taking the time to tune in. I would like to thank our new listeners from Botswana, Ivory Coast, Zambia, China, and Gambia. I would also like to thank our good friends at Wirecast for making it possible for us to be broadcasting both live and globally. And again, a big thank you to my brother Wayne for managing all of what Brian and I throw at him. So he's a great juggler. I appreciate all his help. So to all of our listeners who wish to participate in this show, email me at henry@henrygnoel.com. It is my desire to present a show where everyone can be as actively involved as they want. Now, we trust that you have had an enjoyable weekend thus far, and I do hope that that continues. So let's get into tonight's topic of debt and see what everyone else is thinking about. All right? So let's see what we've got. Well, hi, Matt. How are you? It's great to see that you're on. Thank you so much. Appreciate you tuning in. And, of course, Rita's there. Wayne, appreciate it. And, again, thank you so much. I wanted to see what everybody's opinion was on debt. I mean, I've got my opinions, but I really would prefer to talk to others, have others give me their view on it, because it is such a prevalent thing in the Western world. Debt seems to be the way of life. And with it, I've seen a lot of the negatives that come from it. I mean, I've seen some positives with it. Of course, now you can afford to buy a house or a car that you need, and there's no issues with presenting that. But I was curious to see how everybody feels about it, what they've done. Do they see a chance of trying to get out of debt? What is the premise behind it all? And just to get your opinion as to what you think it is, and why debt seems to be the driving force in the Western world. It seems to be jump on, get a loan, and then we pay it off on time. Or we use the credit cards and pay for everything we can with credit cards, and then we make our monthly payments to pay them off. What I'm trying to find out, though, is really what is your opinion about the whole theme behind credit, and has it been a benefit or has it been a hindrance, and what do you see happening to it in the future? So that's really what we wanted to cover tonight. Now, my view on it is rather different than everybody else's. I mean, I've had the benefit of living in a country that obviously was a debt country. The United States is a debt-driven society, and then moving to Ecuador, which is more of a cash-based system. And you buy what you can up to the point you can, and then you just save, just like we used to do back in the 50s, back in the States. So that is what I've seen. I've seen both sides of this coin right now, and I find that just from the experience that not living in debt seems to be a great way to go. I mean, man, talk about reducing stress. It eliminates the arguments and the bickering within the families, what to do and how to do it, and why we spending the money on this. But it seems to work out real well in the culture where that's all they have done. Now they've just recently introduced credit down here, but it's extremely expensive. It's very, very, very expensive, and so we don't really look to it as a process. I mean, the 14% interest and that sort of stuff, as far as buying a car. So people just save up their money, and they when they have enough cash to buy that car, that's what they do. So, again, it frees you up from a lot of the stresses and a lot of the fighting within the family as to what the money is going for and why. And so I was just curious as to what y'all thought about it. So we'll see as people climb on. We will go ahead and see what goes on. But it is. Debt to me has been a mainstay in the United States. I know, at least from in the 60s, I would guess. I remember my parents setting money aside in coffee cans, and that's how they paid for their food. That's how they paid for our clothes. That's how they pretty much took care of everything, was putting money aside in coffee cans. And then ultimately, my dad got a secure job, and we ended up buying a house out 50 miles east on Long Island. And then and then that was it. That was a debt. It was then a debt driven process at that from then on. So just I've seen the transition. I've watched everything go in two different directions, and now I'm back again into a non-debt situation. And so, I just was, again, curious on what everybody thought. Uh, Education is extremely expensive. We teach our children to to go into a debt situation. I mean, and talk about stresses. I mean, yeah, we may have gone to college. We may not have, depending on where we were, what we did for a living, and so we didn't have or did have that debt, depending on if we did or didn't go. And yet now our kids are coming out of college with hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. The stress of having to pay that back, and no jobs. It's I'm wondering if really having a debt-driven society is the way to go, because it just seems to build so much more stress. It makes us ill. The stresses destroy our immune system. We end up sicker more often. And I'm just, like I said, just curious as to how everybody thought about it. So we'll look at it. Debt to me is a monster. It really is. It's a process whereby we satiate an ego. We satiate something that tells us, yes, we want this, we want this, we want this, and seems to take precedence over our needs. And I think that's part of the issue that we deal with. I think that so long as you're dealing with a need, if you have an emergency or something does happen, yeah, I totally understand, getting a loan or doing the things that need to be done to try to get you through that. And of course, so long as you are doing something to make sure that you set yourself up to be able to handle that emergency if it ever shows back up. So we'll have to see what happens. Hi, Candace. Good evening. Welcome to the show. Jamie, welcome. Welcome to the show. What we're talking about today is debt. We're just going to talk about whether or not we believe that debt is the way to go. My questions have been: I've lived on both sides of it. I grew up before there was a real push, in the very early 50s, late 40s, early 50s, and where debt was not really the issue. We simply, you set money aside, and that's how you budgeted your money. And then my mom and dad bought a house, and we went into debt. And now I live in Ecuador, where we don't live in debt, and it is a cash-driven society. And so I was kind of curious as to what people see, the positives and or the negatives of living in a debt-driven society. But I really was more interested in the opinions that you all have as to whether or not the benefits, what are the detriments of living in debt. And me, I have my stuff, my opinion. I know what I think, but I'm more interested in what you guys think. And is living in debt, there are benefits to it, of course, because you can have things now. You don't have to wait to get them. Uh, but at the same time, there are the issues that when we go into debt. So, for example, we buy that house with that mortgage, or we buy that car on that loan, and we attach the ownership of it to ourselves, which is very interesting. When you check that little box for the bank or for something that says, do you own your home? And so you check yes. Well, not if you have a mortgage. Um, and the proof in the pudding is don't make the payments, and then the people that own it will come by and take your house or your car. And so we seem to think that when we get a mortgage that we own what it is that we have, or when we get a loan for a car, we own it. And And I'm wondering if that's starting to mislead people into thinking that they're really not in debt, or that they have a commodity that is they can sell for a profit. So I'm just kind of curious as to what people think. Rita says debt is the only way to have stuff. Credit is easily available, thereby making having what you must have readily available. The trick is that the credit card makes it easy to purchase, and people get sucked in, and before they know it, they are in way over their heads. It is never ending battle because most people do not have the discipline to curtail spending. Yep, I totally agree with you, Rita. That's exactly what it is. Candace says too many Americans live on plastic, huge car payments and house mortgages they can't afford. And that's it. And what is, to me, I wanted to find out what you think, what is the driving force behind all of that? I mean, I know if there's something that we need, and I totally understand that, something that we need, and I get that. I can see going into debt for that. But for once, I'm kind of curious because I see people, they have a house with a big mortgage, they have two cars, they have a boat, maybe a motorhome, and they're all paying it on time because they couldn't afford to pay for it, but they think they own it. And again, the proof of the pudding is just stop making the payments, and you'll find out who owns it because they're going to come collect it. Um, and then we have that whole concept of of you know doing your consolidation loans, where you take all of your bills, and that you can't afford to pay now, and so you consolidate them all into a payment to what you can. And as soon as people do that, they go out and buy more stuff because now they have more ready cash. I don't really understand it. Jamie says stuff is baggage for me, and I want to live in a hut. And thank you, Jamie, because that is what exactly it is. They're buying stuff. Is it stuff that you need, or is it stuff that you want? And if you want, is it your want, or is something pushing you to get what it is that you are going into debt for? And then we teach our children the same thing. And that is what's so hard about it. We're teaching our children how to live in debt. And I think we're setting up a bad example. Candace says, I see people driving cars worth more than their homes. And boy, isn't that the truth? And to me, when you do that, now you're dealing with image, you're dealing with vanity, and that's ego. That's what the driving force, I think, behind a lot of this is simply our ego. And it gets us into trouble. It really does put us into trouble. And it strains the family, it strains the relationships. I mean, it's just really hard. Rita says, but they think they can afford it because they do not think it is bad to be thousands of dollars on a credit card. They do not realize that the minimum payment is a death penalty. Credit is huge business. Look at the consolidation companies, transfer of balances, and new credit cards, etc. Absolutely. Companies don't go into creating credit cards or loaning money out to lose money. Let's face it. They're not in the business of just losing money. They're in the business of making lots of money. And so they make it readily available. And I think I had gone through a scenario one time, way back in the beginning of all of these broadcasts, where I had laid out a scenario on how to totally control the population. And this was part of that element, was getting people so in debt that there's no way out, that you own them. And that's exactly what I think these credit cards companies do, and the banks and the mortgage companies. They own us. They simply own us. We have a mortgage. That mortgage company, or the lender who's ever loaning the money, it's not the mortgage company, but the lender, own you. I mean, you don't make the payment, they take your house. So I can't claim ownership. I know I'm making a debt. No, the bank owns my house, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think it's really hard to put labels on it, to where we've been so misled to think that, yeah, I have a $200,000 mortgage and I'm in debt by that much, and therefore I own my house. And I think we get a false sense of security, maybe. I'm not sure. Candace says car payments are more than house mortgages in a lot of cases. If it baffles you, and I think because it's stretched over a lot less time. I mean, when you stretch let's say, you buy a $100,000 truck, and which is not hard to do anymore. And you're stretching $100,000 for a home. over 30 years, and your mortgage payment is, maybe $150, but you throw it into a car for 5 years, and your payments are huge. But we do this. We don't even think twice about it. Um, and I'm and I don't understand that mentality. I really don't. It stymies me to think that this is the way society thinks. Like it's there. And then we teach our kids to do the same thing, and they go to school, they go to a university, they go into way into debt, hundreds of thousands of dollars into debt. They come out with all of this stress. They can't find a job, and yet they have to make the payments on their loan after a certain period of time. And there's just no way that that can be done. And to me, it's almost like a Ponzi scheme. I mean, you can't win no matter what you do. And I don't get it. I just don't understand why we don't wake up. Why can't people think that this just doesn't make sense? It just doesn't make sense to me. And like I says, and it really becomes prevalent when you do live in a country where it is cash based. I mean, you want a car, you save up the money, you buy a car. You want a house, you save up the money, you buy a house. You're building a house, you use what money you have, you get to it built just so far, and then you wait until you have more money, and then you build again. And that's just the way it is. And I don't understand why we all don't do that. Jamie says a lot of us are one paycheck away from being homeless, and that is so true. And not to mention that if someone gets sick, and there's that emergency content. See, I can understand going in debt for an emergency. Something happens, you have an emergency, that's a need. Now it's a need. And I can see going into debt for a need. But unless you are planning and do something so that you never fall back into that position in case of an emergency. In other words, you start saving up money so that you can handle that hospital bill, or you can handle the doctor visit, or the ambulance run, or whatever the case may be. You prepare for that. Yeah, burn me. Shame on me for getting into trouble the first time. But I mean, it's just hard. You to see just how difficult it is for people to do that. And being one paycheck away from being homeless is just a horrible way to live, I think. Rita says it is difficult for people to live now. They all live paycheck to paycheck. Heaven forbid that an emergency comes up, whether it is a car repairs or medical expenses. Absolutely true. And we think just like Jamie. You're absolutely right. And I think that that's really what it is. But we've become so comfortable to it. It's like we think, I don't know. I think we think we're going to live forever, and I don't know anybody that's ever gotten out of this place alive. But we really live this world like we're going to be here forever, and we're not. I mean, we are going to pass on at some point in time, but nobody lives their life for that. They, they just spend. They go into debt, go further into debt, go further into debt. And I guess maybe they feel like they deserve or they're entitled to the pleasures of life. So therefore, well, why not? I mean, I really don't know. I'm not sure what the psychology is behind all that. I mean, I'm not a psychologist, so I don't want to get into that. But I don't understand any of that. Rita says people can't live now; they just existing exactly, and yet they working for the future that is not even promised to them, and yet they live paycheck to paycheck. What kind of a future is that? It's not even a way to live in the present, but boy, that's a tough way to live in the future. Student loans. Candace says student loans really became awful a few years back. Interest rates are high and also can require a co-signer. Absolutely true. I know two kids that's happened to. Very sad. One fell behind because they didn't have a qualified co-signer. And that's it. Rita says life is just too stressful. And we keep doing things that add more and more stress to our lives. Is it possible that we just can't learn? I mean, is it really something about that simple that we have been so brainwashed into believing that if we want it, we are entitled to it, therefore we go get it, regardless of the damage it does to us, damage it does to our families, damage it does to the relationships? I mean, have we gotten that far into the callousness that that's where we do? We just don't care. And if somebody questions them about it, they become hostile. Um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Minimum wage is ridiculous, not a living wage. No, no, and then, and it's really interesting because I don't think it ever was really a living wage. It was always minimum wage, which I think was that supposed to be that encouragement to do better and to work hard and get promoted, and the more you did, the more you got paid. Well, today, you know, you now if the now the every all the jobs are saying, well, it requires, you have to have a PhD now to go ahead and get a job to be to flip hamburgers at McDonald's. And after you go, the 250, $300,000 in debt, and then you come out of school carrying that piece of paper that says, I'm entitled, and there's no jobs. What do they do? It's just, yeah, it's a very perplexing situation, and we keep doing it. We just keep doing it. It's just time after time. It seems like, you get into debt, you get so far into debt, you lose your job. Wow, that's it. We're done. Like Jamie said, one paycheck and you're done. So now you got to scramble. So now you got all of that stress. You lost your job, so you now have to file bankruptcy. So what bankruptcy just gives you a free pass. So you get your free pass. You wait your few years. It comes back off your credit. You get your credit built back up. What's the first thing you do? You go back into debt. It's almost like, I don't know. We laugh at children because it said how many times you have to touch the hot stove before you learn it's hot. How many times do you have to be suffering and stressed, divorced, constantly fighting with spouses because of the debt before you learn not to go in debt anymore? I just don't get it. Candace says that kids starting new lives, a huge debt, very sad, and you're absolutely right, Candace. It is. And I think it's so wrong. Hi, John. How are you? Welcome to the show. I'm glad that you made it. It is really hard. It's really frustrating because that's not what I don't think life was about. I don't think that was our intention to be here, is to be in a debt type of environment. So Rita says people cannot see solutions because they are too busy working to make minimum payments. They buy the cheapest, least nutritional food to feed their families, and this starts another vicious cycle. And what is the way out? Well, I agree. I totally agree. But perhaps not having the $1,500, $2,000 a month mortgage payment, and the $2,000 a month car payment, or the four car payments that they have, and the boat payment, of course. Oh, and then the motor, I had to have the motorhome, plus the gas prices to run all these things. And all of a sudden, people that make $5,000 a month, who would normally be having a real comfortable life, can't even live paycheck to paycheck. So yeah, I totally agree with you. John says, "Hey, everybody, sorry, it's having too much fun with my daughter." That's great. I'm glad. That's what you should be doing, John. There's your priority, and I like that. But yeah, we're just talking about living in debt and what it's doing to people, what it's doing to society. I got to keep an eye on the clock here, so we got to keep it going. When just told me, we'll just keep an eye on it. We'll tell you. So so yeah, I find it very perplexing that we live in this world, purposely live in this world in debt, purposely live in debt. We purposely do it. And I guess the benefit is to have this stuff now, but it's not yours. It's not like you own it. And so I don't guess I understand the pleasure of it. I don't see what it is, and having to figure out all of the stuff, that all the payments that have to go out. It just doesn't make any. I just don't get it. I guess I'm really confused, and that's why I wanted you guys' help to get a better understanding on it. Candace says I don't think they even think about that they actually own nothing. That has to be it, Candace. I don't know if it's. I'm not sure what it is because I remember when you're going down to buy something, or you're going down to get a loan, for a business or whatever the case may be, and they always ask you, do you own or rent your home? Well, to me, if you own it, that means you own it, and if you don't own it, then you're renting it, literally. So you're making payments to a bank, the bank owns it, so you're renting. And so I think we've got this thing confused. I think people just don't understand what that I think that what ownership actually means. I think they simply think that they live in it, therefore they own it, or if they drive it, they own it, even though they're making payments. So I don't understand this, and we make it this way. So I don't. Again, I'm not really sure what all it does. Welcome, Patty. I'm glad that you're tuned in. Thank you so much. It's great to see. Great to see you. Thank you so much. Wow. But yeah, I just question whether or not we are understand what we're doing when we go into debt like that. And again, having been on both sides of that coin several times now, to be, had grown up before debt, grown and then grew up throughout my high school years with debt, and living my life in the United States and leaving the United States, and now living in Ecuador where it is cash based, and I don't have any debt. So I find it very interesting to see what people do to themselves, and that it is actually getting worse and worse and worse. It's not getting any better. So is it we simply don't understand it anymore, or we just believe we actually own this stuff? I really don't know. But I don't think the stresses are worth it. I don't think the illnesses are worth it, and I sure don't think going through divorces left and right because you can't handle the pressure anymore because you no longer can talk to each other. I think that that's crazy. So 3 more minutes. All right, 3 more minutes. Thank you. So Candace says, yeah, John says, debt is modern slavery. And it really is. Absolutely true, John. I totally agree with you. Candace says, I have a friend with multiple car payments, and just one of them is $1,200. And I don't understand it, Candace. I really don't. I mean, if it's true that you work hard for your money, then I mean, why throw it away like that? It just doesn't. Along with all that stress, that's to me like gambling. I don't gamble. I'm not a gambler, so I don't gamble. I probably get more enjoyment watching money, swirl down a toilet bowl. I think because I just don't see the reason to gamble. And I never believed I'd ever get rich quick or I'd win a lotto, so I don't spend money on it. And thank you, Kansas. I'm in good company then. Thank you so much. 2 more minutes. All right, all righty, guys. We'll try to go ahead and get this thing wind down here. 2 more minutes. I want to thank you guys for joining us. Thank you so much for your input. I really appreciate it. Yeah, this is something that I've just been thinking about, so I really do thank your opinions and taking the time to do this. So again, thank you. Oh, and let me fill you in. O'Brien is home. He did it. They successfully removed the thing. I'm sure everybody saw it on Facebook. The shunt. He has been home. He's been sleeping an awful lot, and he needs some time. He needs recovery. He's in a lot more pain than what he thought he'd be, but I think he's going to settle it down and he'll deal with it. So I think that'll work. I think I got down to 1 minute now. So Jamie says my biggest regret in life was not having respect for money. And I don't think we were taught that, Jamie. I think it's something we just didn't get taught that. It's always presented to us through advertising and through companies. It's easy to get, so why not? So anyway, all right, we're gonna sign off here. We're gonna sign off. So tell you what, so see you tomorrow evening, same time. Hasta mañana. Thank you. Have a good evening, everybody.